And let's come to this breakfast that we had yesterday, Lead 2013. You're the host, Mr. Foluso Phillips. Just like to know what was the vision behind this breakfast and what is going to do for organizations in Nigeria.
Okay, I think one thing you got to appreciate that we got to put this, especially the context of Interbrand, because Interbrand just released the latest top global brands, which from the data that was provided, about 1.9 trillion dollars or so, way above what is the net asset value of a lot of these companies. But what we are trying to do here in Nigeria is, first of all, there's a strong relationship and association that's existed between Phillips Consulting and Interbrand Doug de Villiers, Interbrand Sampson de Villiers. And what we're saying is, how can we present to the private sector, to the Nigerian business public, so to speak, a new model for managing their brands. We're saying that how can we get organizations to get more value from their brands? And how can we get them to even begin to appreciate how to value their brands? And so yesterday, Doug gave a brilliant presentation on not just the philosophy of managing your brands, but a tool that's available that can allow people to be a lot more effective in the way and manner in which their brands are displayed, and the way and manner in which money is spent, the way and manner in which you would actually measure your brands or manage your brands by having the ability to measure how well it's doing. So yesterday was about how are you doing with your brand? What perception do you have about your brand? How are you managing your brand? How are you managing your advertising spend, your marketing spend, your communication spend? Is it a very structured thing, or is it just putting more and more adverts in the newspapers? How are you going to present a case to your board that allows them to put more money but in a very, very reasonable way, or even less money, but in a much more effective way? I mean, Doug said yesterday that it's incredible. It made me think that I think Google, you said, they don't advertise.
Never have.
They never have advertised, and yet you would think that they were in every single newspaper that's printed on a daily basis. So I think yesterday's event was to try and get the Nigerian public to appreciate that, look, there's a lot more. You've got to go back to basics and begin to look at how it is that you've got to manage your brand. And it's not about advertising, it's not about your color scheme, it's not about all those things. Those things are all, brand, how can I, what's
components.
the word? Yeah, they're just components of it. And you need to look at the essence of the organization itself. And we also make people understand that, look, think about it. Can you represent your brand? Is it a case of you branding the way you are, and therefore that's been good? Or is it that you're creating a brand and then say we want to try and be that brand? There's a slight difference in that.
We've also, we also noticed, and as Foluso says, it's about changing the conversation. It's time to get to sort of branding 2.0, if you like. The initial part was to get good-looking logos and apply consistency, but more and more, and quite rightly so, the boards of organizations, big and small, the leadership, the owners, etc., are asking crucial questions about the return on marketing investment. And historically, this is a global thing as well, where marketing is seen as a big hole that you pour money into in the hope that the billboards and all the adverts somehow create the direct pull through that you require. And certainly it works to a certain extent. But the world has changed. As we're filming this right now, this is something that's going to be on the internet. It's going to be YouTube based, etc. So you have a much wider audience very quickly, with a lot of influence and a lot of capability of talking and carrying the conversation. So the world has opened up. Little companies have now got access to millions and millions of people online instantly, but their message and what they put forward needs to be real. So the whole mix within marketing has changed. One-way communication through the form of billboards or print adverts and what have you have a very important role to play, but they're not the dominant role they used to be. So many organizations and the boards of these companies are turning around and going to the marketing department and saying, are we spending the correct money in the correct space? And as Foluso says, do we measure the success of this, or is marketing a cost center? And key organizations, if you look at Samsung, for an example, has used that kind of modeling to be very precise in the kind of products they make, who they talk to, how they present it, the people they employ, how they behave, how they're trained. So the entire brand experience is not led by one-way communication. It's led by what the organization actually does. The people it has, the product it makes, how it presents itself to the market. And it's less about shouting, it's less about telling people what you're about. It's more about giving people a platform that they can see what you're about. And that changes marketing entirely, because now HR, human resources, is a key component to marketing. Are they bringing in the right people? Are they properly trained? Is the attitude appropriate? That is way more important than an ad, because an advertisement is a promise to the market, and the guys look at it. Then they walk into the branch or they pick up the product, and it had better behave or look or feel per that advert. If it doesn't, the brand is dead, because we can communicate to millions of people and give out the bad news or the good news. So the whole marketing mix changes, and the board absolutely has the right to ask of marketing, are we spending the correct amount of money in the right place, and what is the return on the investment? And if the board is not asking that, then they're at fault, because it cannot just be spend in the hope that the message sticks. The world has changed.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, in the first 100 brands, are they Nigerian companies? And if they are not, what should these Nigerian brands be doing to now begin to step up their competition?
Well, the best global brand report by Interbrand is the original report. We put together the ISO 10668 on brand valuation. This was our 13th edition of Best Global Brand. So we've been doing this for a significant amount of time. The key component with Best Global Brands from Interbrand is the set rules and regulations around being global. So the brands need to be global. They need to be multi-continental. There's a certain percentage of revenue needs to come from outside their natural market. They need to be recognized as global. And of course, financial information needs to be made available. So in fact, in the best global brands at the moment, there's not a single brand from Africa, which
Africa.
is not one.
Not one from Africa.
Not a single one. And
That's
in fact, there's not one from any of the BRIC countries.
Any of the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India,
nothing at the moment.
China.
Now that for me is my single biggest challenge, because that's disappointing. But obviously it's up to those organizations also to become multi-continental, and if you like to at least be considered within the rules of best global brands. Now there's hundreds of tables.
There's not even companies like Petrobras, Airtel, Tata, those are...
No. So, but the key trick is now, if you have a look at, we value many of these brands in helping them create their strategic presence. So, if you look at MTN, for an example, I can tell you that the value of their brand very comfortably would fit in the sort of top 1/3 of the best global brands. It is an incredibly valuable brand, and there are numerous that would fit in there, but they are not considered because they're not within the full scope of the rules and regulations at the moment. But to a lesser extent, we would like to see African brands play in that without a doubt, and they will come. More are coming from the smaller economies at the moment, and the BRIC countries will for sure start participating, because the world has become a small place. Any of those brands from the BRIC countries are now becoming multi-continental. So I think in the next year or two it'll change significantly. But there are a lot of tables out there, a lot of people doing the top African brands and the top of this brand and what have you. Yeah. The problem there is, there's a good side to it, because you're creating the profile of the importance of the brand as an asset. So we agree with having those sort of tables out. The rigor behind them, and if it's only about featuring on a table, is a problem, because that's not really what it's about. What it's about is using your brand to generate revenue, and that's how the Interbrand methodology works. It's not just an arbitrary figure or a figure that doesn't contain a revenue component to it, and that's the important part. Having a highly recognized brand, having a popular brand, a well looked at brand, a well represented, all good, but the brand is an asset. It needs to create revenue for the business, and the components of that sit within the brand valuation methodology, and that's the critical component. A lot of guys we all celebrate being in the top and going up and down tables, of course, but the reason is, why did I go up? Or more importantly, what do I next need to do to go up higher? And especially if that ranking is based on your brand's ability to generate revenue, because it's about money.
Yes.
So it's as easy as that.